Hello and welcome to Chapter 2 in BCOM book. It's a chapter titled Focusing on Interpersonal and Group Communication. We talked just briefly about some behavioral theories that impact communication. Abraham Maslow is one that you've probably heard in psychology class. I'm going to move quickly through that one, and stroking is another that you can read clearly. The Johari window is a concept that many people don't understand. It's a little more difficult for them to pick up. Let me spend just a minute talking about the Johari window. You'll see the illustration at the top of page 22 that shows you what the Johari window is all about. This is how we understand ourselves, and there are 4 panes of glass that we can look through. First of all, the free or the open area is that area in which we know things about ourselves and others know things about us too. And I'm able to talk to others about myself and they're able to talk to me about myself because we both know these things about me. But it can get complicated if one party or the other don't know something about me. That includes myself. So in the second pane, that's the blind area. That's where I don't know something about myself, but you have observed it in me. You've noticed that I act a particular way, and I have not seen that I have this streak of anger or this questioning, timid outlook on life. I think that's normalcy to me, but you've noticed that I have this problem in this area, and if you would just open up and help me, maybe confront me and work with me a little bit, you might help me to overcome things if I'm willing to see this blind spot in my life and work on it. There's a third window, and that is where I know something about myself, but I'm keeping it hidden from others, and they don't know that about me. It's difficult sometimes to live with secrets in our lives, and when we do, we run many risks. We have to be careful about that. But I want to be as open and transparent as I can be so that others can know me and I can live in that free window, the pane number 1, where I know about myself and you know about me. But if I'm withholding facts and information, then I become a person who is leaning toward deception, deceiving others and fooling others, and that's not good for me to be that kind of a person. The fourth pane that you see is that unknown area where there are things about me I don't know and others don't know those things about me either. It's that area that people many times will go to seek a counselor and find someone who will help them to understand things. So the counselor is looking for these secret unknown things about me, and I'm trying to figure it out too, to understand why I'm fearful or fretful about things. But the Johari window is an understanding for us to look at people and to try to understand where they're coming from and why they're acting the way that they are. The Johari window encourages us to be more open and transparent with others and to be willing to accept criticism or willing to accept the observations of others as we try to learn more about ourselves. As we move on in the textbook, we come to the theories of Douglas McGregor, who talks to us about the theory X manager and the theory Y manager. Very simply, the theory X manager is of the opinion that most of his or her workers are lazy and don't want to do the job and hard to get along with. And if you've ever had a theory X manager, you know how difficult that can be to work with that kind of a boss. A theory Y manager, according to McGregor, looks at people differently and says, here's a person who wants to do a good job, and if given the resources, they will jump in and work very hard to achieve the tasks that are theirs. And you know what it's like to have a theory Y manager, one who works with you and helps you and has confidence in you. It makes all the difference in the way you do your work. This is an important behavioral theory for managers to understand because it affects the way you do business, it affects the way your employees feel about you and are able to do their jobs better. There's also total quality management in the textbook, which you'll want to take a look at. It is where decision-making authority is given to more people within the organization. It extends the boundaries of that organization and the decisions that are made for people and the productivity and the operations. It's an excellent way for new ideas to come to the forefront, to have something new and creative happen within an organization. All of these ideas suggest to us that understanding people and knowing how they operate and knowing how they think will help us in business to do a better job. We move to nonverbal communication. And our textbook talks about kinesic communication as being primarily nonverbal communication. Now that's not quite true. Kinesic, the word kinesic means movement. And to apply that generally to nonverbal communication is really quite a stretch. So I encourage you to use the word kinesic for movement. For example, dance is kinesiology. Physical education is kinesiology. Speak more specifically about nonverbal communication by using just that term, nonverbal communication. It would clarify in the textbook if they would use that term. The textbook also talks about meta-communication, in which we say things, but we use different kinds of language beyond words to get different feelings and emotions across. So for example, if I say this to you, "You did good," it says one thing, but if I say the same three words to you differently, "You did good," it says quite something different. It all has to do with inflection of the voice, maybe some nonverbals thrown in, maybe some different in the intensity or the volume of our voice, but this is called meta-communication. It goes beyond the specific words that we use to communicate. Talking about nonverbal communication, many rules are in the textbook. I would just highlight one of them for you. You won't see it exactly this way, but it is this: you cannot not communicate. You are always communicating. Even when you try to be silent, you are communicating messages to other people through your nonverbal communication, through the cues that you do physically, through your eye contact or lack thereof. You cannot not communicate. You are always making statements, and these usually come through via our nonverbal communication. Look at some of the rules of nonverbal communication, and you'll find them very interesting and very useful. Listening is also an issue that we want to talk about. Listening for specific purposes. You can have casual listening, which means you're just only half-heartedly listening, but obviously aware of some of the things that are being spoken. And higher levels of listening include listening for information, intensive listening, and empathetic listening, where you're trying to read between the words to understand the feelings and the emotions of the sender. We can also have bad listening habits, and the textbook mentions a number of them. For example, allowing disruptions or encouraging disruptions even, over-listening, dismissing subjects as uninteresting, making value judgments within ourselves and refusing to listen, or failing to observe nonverbal communication aids that senders are trying to use to help us understand what they're saying. All of these things lead to bad listening habits. With group communication, as we continue through the text, we talk about increasing focus on groups in communication. And in the previous chapter, we talked about one of the strategic forces in business communication changing the workplace is the increasing use of teams. And so we do have different focus on groups when we start looking at organizations. Take a look at the characteristics of effective groups at the bottom of page 29. Groups that are going to be characteristic and working well together many times will have common goals. Each individual in the group knows the goals of the group and work toward those. People understand that they have a role to play within that group and they play it well. The longevity or a team that has enough time to get its work done. The size, the status of the individuals within the group, group norms or rules, and leadership. All of these things factor in to having a good team achieving the task well. The text goes on to talk about some of the group roles that I mentioned earlier. There are positive and there are negative group roles. A positive group role that perhaps you play would be to be a summarizer, one who tries to collect the thoughts that have been going on and to review those things, or a harmonizer, or a reporter. You can see the definitions of those in the textbook. There are also negative roles. Those might be a group clown, one who's always distracting people, or a free rider, or what I call a social loafer, one who relies on the team to get their work done and they don't contribute anything to it. So there are both negative and positive roles that you need to be aware of about what happens within a group and the roles that people play. Bruce Tuckman has talked about the life cycle of an organization, and that model is at the bottom of page 31. He's talked about the forming of a group, how it comes together. He's talked about storming within the group, where the people are trying to figure out the rules and the way they're going to operate and trying to understand the purposes and the procedures for the group task. And then the third step is the norming, where the rules are developed, and the fourth is that of performing, where actually the group is getting the task done. So Tuckman's model of group for group performance, starting with storming and then starting with forming and then storming, norming, and performing. This is a well-known rule or model of group dynamics that you'll want to be aware of. And you'll see it happening in groups all the time. I'm running out of time. I only have about 2 minutes left. It's interesting that YouTube will only allow me to upload up to 15 minutes. And so I'm trying to keep these lectures under 15 minutes. I have less than 2 minutes now. So you understand why I hurry through these lectures. Face-to-face meetings, I want you to take a look at that information on page 33. It talks about what we must do to have good meetings face-to-face, but also in that page we're talking about electronic meetings and how we try to increase the productivity of an electronic meeting. Sometimes it's very difficult to have effective and useful electronic meetings, and we try to do that by observing some of the rules, and this page will help you to understand that. But I want to spend just the last few moments that I have making some suggestions for effective meetings, and you'll find this on page 34 and 35 of your textbook. These may seem like very normal and commonly understood rules for you to have an effective meeting, but these are very true. It really does make a difference if you follow these suggestions on these 2 pages about having effective meetings. First of all, limit the length and the frequency of meetings as much as possible. Nobody likes a meeting if it's not necessary. And nobody likes a meeting that goes longer than it needs to go. If you practice that, you'll help people to find that your meetings to be useful and helpful and productive, and they won't mind coming to them. Making satisfactory arrangements, the textbook talks about this. Refreshments, at least a room that's comfortable enough to sit in, comfortable chairs, a table if possible, those things are important and helpful. Distributing the agenda well in advance so that people can prepare for it, think about the meeting and what it's going to be about. Encouraging participation and sometimes asking people to contribute their ideas. Every meeting will have some very quiet people who don't say much, but that doesn't mean they're not thinking, and it doesn't mean they don't have ideas to contribute. So please call people out, encourage them to share and to participate in a meeting. Maintain order, make sure everyone has an equal chance to speak. Manage conflict. Sometimes emotions can get very heated, and it will help if a leader is there to calm people down and to control it a little bit. Seek consensus as much as possible, and many times taking a vote is the best way to do that, and obviously take good minutes and distribute them when the meeting is over. Excellent rules for having a good meeting that, if practiced, it will help you to be much more effective in the meetings you're in. I suggest that you watch meetings that you sit in for the next few weeks and see how these rules are effectively used or broken to the detriment of the meeting. And that's the end of Chapter 2. We look forward to seeing you for the next chapter.